And now for something completely different. This is a new segment that I'm going to start, and it's going to be called Life on the Rails until I think of something else better to call it. The main subject of today will be the day that I put 47361 in the dirt, but more of that later. I'm a bit unsure about how the format of this one's going to work out at the moment, and I'm going to have to play around with it just a little bit. My intention is to do some interviews with my work colleagues and friends in the future, talking about different subjects. So as of this date, I've been working on the railway for 31 years, and I've been driving trains for 28. I've seen an awful lot of things: good, bad, funny, hilarious, and disturbing. A friend of mine once told me that I should write a book about my experiences, and I was not that enamoured by writing books and stuff like that. But I did like the idea, and this is what that is. So this is me putting my experiences in a book format on video. So I won't talk about anything that'll embarrass anybody or get anybody into trouble, but you will hear the same names crop up pretty regularly, because the railway it really is such a diverse place, and I've worked with all sorts of people. Some really clever people that really shouldn't be train drivers at all. They should be doing other things way, way cleverer. I've worked with the mayor of Crewe, who was a train driver back in the 90s. Be Ron Salmon. You'll hear other stories featuring him. I've worked with Justice of the Peace in Peterborough, who was a train driver as well. A very, very funny man that we'll talk about today, later. There's also been a whole host of other people that range from comedians, aggressors, bullies, but mostly, generally, nice people. But before we start that, I just want to do a little bit of news and updating on the model scene. So I started the XP64 coaches, and they're going okay. It's taken a lot longer than I anticipated, mainly because they're right on the edge of my modelling skills, and the fact that I've been busy with work for the last 2 weeks and for the next week as well. But hopefully they're going to paint this afternoon, or today, later. So to start off these chats, the first story I'm going to say is Willie Watkins, the JP from Peterborough. When Whitemoor first reopened about a decade ago, there was literally nothing there apart from a few porter cabins, and he was there. I wasn't there, but I know somebody else that was, that can verify this story. And he went to the girl on the reception desk and asked where the toilet was, and they were in the process of building them at the time. And she said, "Oh, there's a porter cabin, a portaloo outside, but I'll get you the key." And he said, "Key? What for?" She said, "Oh, it's got a padlock on it." And he said, "A padlock on a portaloo? Who the hell is going to nick a bucket of poo?" Needless to say, the reception lady didn't really know what to say or what to make of him. But that's the sort of guy he is. He's really funny, dry. So as well as other people's stories that I can actually verify, there are one or two of my own, like when me and Jim, my colleague that I work with quite frequently at the moment, when I first started driving the test trains, the programs were slightly different, well, a lot different. And I remember we went to King's Lynn one morning, and we had a good hour before we was due back out again. decided to go to the cafe on the platform for breakfast, and we didn't think any more of it. We went in, ordered breakfast, sat about chatting, as you do, and about an hour later, I looked at my watch and said, "Come on, Jim, we better go. We're due away in like 4 minutes." And he said, "Yeah, all right then." And still eating the last of his sausage, drinking his coffee. And I wandered out onto the platform, horrified to see that the signal at the end of the platform was already off, green, and we hadn't even changed ends yet. So I dashed back in, told him, and then we literally legged it down the end of the platform, changed ends really quickly, and then departed Kings Lynn with 237s and whatever test train it was. I think it was TRC or TIC, maybe. Going across the level crossing by the signal box, and there was just reams and reams of cars backed up everywhere. Never mind, we didn't hear anything else about it. So let's talk about 47361, the day that I put it on the floor. Friday, the 19th of May, 1995. The job was to ferry engines to and from various locations around Crewe for fuel, maintenance and servicing, and then back to the yards ready for their next turns of duty. On that job, you could normally get done by 2 or 3 in the afternoon, depending on what needed moving and from where. And I was pretty hopeful of getting an early dart that day. So according to my diary entries, the job that we're talking about consisted of 47285, and I'd picked it up at the north end and taken it to the down holding sidings for fuel. There I picked up 47361 and then went off to the ETD to collect 3 Class 90s. Once we'd hooked them all together, 47361 was leading, 285 behind it, and then the 3 electrics behind that. And from the ETD, I was to take them back to the north end and put them on the south yard. From the ETD to the north end, I went behind the box on the up through line where I took this picture. I then changed ends and drove from the leading Class 90, which was 148, through the points and onto the south yard, and then through the next set of points where I got a massive jolt and it threw me across the cab, and I thought, bloody hell, that was awful. Anyway, we were still going, and we weren't going very fast, only 4 or 5 miles an hour. So as I was getting closer to the 86s that were stable on that road, the train came to a stop without me touching the brakes. And I thought, oh, that's a little odd. But I was not close enough, as close to the 86s as I wanted to be. So just give it a little bit of power just to get a little bit closer, and it wouldn't move, just wouldn't move. And I even thought at that moment, we're off the road then. I put the parking brake on the leading Class 90, took my key out and wandered back to have a little bit of a look. And as you can see in the bottom right hand corner, there's a huge chunk of rail that had dropped out between 2 sleepers. And that was obviously the big jolt that I got when I first went in. Now what I think had actually happened was, as I went in, that rail had snapped out, and because it was the leading bogie, it had 2 choices, either to keep going or to come off the road. It would have been worse for me if I'd have come off the road at that point. Now, because the engines were all fairly closely coupled, so the couplings were tight and the buffers were together, I think that meant that as we went over that broken rail, that kept all of the other engines in check until the 47 at the end, the last bogie, because it had nothing to keep it in check, just drifted across all the lines and come off. That was my surmisation of what happened, because nobody actually sort of told me, because nobody did. And at that point, my friend and colleague at the time, Chris Neal, was knocking about and came over to have a look. And he said, "Oh, have you got your camera?" And I said, "Of course I've got my camera." So he took the picture of me looking rather pleased with myself that I'd put a 47 on the deck. And literally 5 minutes after it happened, the whole place was crawling with plate layers and fitters, knocking in keys, tightening up chair bolts. What they couldn't really hide was the fact that there was a huge chunk of rail that was dropped out between two sleepers, though. So there was me thinking I was going to get an early finish out of this one. I had to go up to the inspector's office and write a little bit of a report, and they decried that it wasn't my fault, and I had to keep working. And I said, "What? I've just had a bloody derailment." And they said, "Oh, no, you've still got work to do." And I had to go back out and do more jobs, ferrying engines all over the place again. And I think I made overtime that day as well, which was damn annoying. Obviously, that was before the Mediscreen sort of culture took over. I mean, today, if that had happened, I'd be off for 3 weeks at least. So that's enough of me rambling on for today. I think the next video will be another model build video, and I'm gearing up for another view round the railway as well. Thanks for watching. See you next time.